Walter, welcome to the show.
It's an honor being here. Looking forward to it today.
Thanks for joining us today, Walter, and a lot of great guests going to join us throughout the day today as well. John Lucido at 2:30, Kirk Manair at 3 o'clock, Rob DeMello at 3:30, Blake Bedingfield at 4:30, and Rob Parker at 5:30, and a lot of great discussion coming up. A great Alabama quarterback here with us, and Walter, we've had a great discussion the past few days about the quarterback competition coming in. Exciting times here at Alabama. Not every day you have a fun quarterback battle going into fall camp.
Oh, that is exciting, and to be able to watch it and be able to understand it, having gone through it over the years, just watching it and experiencing it personally, it's going to be exciting to see how it all plays out. Looking forward to that as well.
What's been your thoughts so far just through this first week, even though we haven't got to a scrimmage yet?
Well, for me, having the pivot person there to play at that position is very important at any college or whatever it is. It's emphasized a lot here at the University of Alabama. The thoughts that I've had relative to this situation, it'd be great to be able to play both of those guys because it's strategically for a team that's going to be the opponent. It's very difficult to get ready for Jalen Hurts and get ready for Tua Tagovailoa. It's just really, really intriguing to watch there, and I'm excited to be able to watch it and see how it plays out.
Well, what are some of the strengths you see from Tua and then Jalen?
Tua had a chance to watch him when he got here in the spring of last year, and he just jumped off the field. It's like Tua, to me, he sees things in 3D. That's a quality of great quarterbacks. He has a great release. Fundamentally, in terms of just how you deliver a football, he delivers a fastball, but it's soft. I mean, it doesn't break up when it hits you. It's just a soft ball. It's a ball that receivers like to catch. And just seeing those qualities, I haven't seen those qualities. You don't see those qualities very often. The last quarterback at Alabama that didn't possess these qualities, but he was a good quarterback that got my attention was AJ. But I've only seen guys in the pros, have a ball like Tua. And one guy that comes to mind is Drew Brees at New Orleans there. So it's going to be exciting to see how things kind of pan itself out. For Jalen has really exemplified a lot of leadership on this team. He has an ability that a lot of quarterbacks don't have, and that's the ability to run. He's had some issues as it relates to being able to deliver the football, in terms of the passing side. I'm looking forward to see how that happens as well. And I'm looking forward to talking about that, during this conversation, because I think there's a lot of things there that can come to the table, and you can in this competition that everybody's looking at, it can make it very interesting. So that's going to be exciting to be a part of.
What's the relevance of having the quarterback coach now, Dan Enos?
Well, I was looking at the roster for coaches there at Bama. Enos was not there last year. He was in Arkansas. I look at the body of work of Dan in terms of what he did with the quarterbacks there at Arkansas. And it's interesting that Coach Saban saw fit to bring a guy like that in. And, that, Nick has an eye for seeing what needs to happen, and he brought Dan Enos in to be a part of this staff. I saw how he developed the two brothers at Arkansas, and I'm just looking forward to see how Tua's going to react, how Jalen's going to react, how Mac Jones is going to react relative to his style of coaching there. So that's going to be exciting to see as well.
Chad Haynie, A.P. Steadham, joined today on the game by Walter Lewis. Ryan Fowler off on vacation out in Grand Cayman right now. Got a text from Ryan today that he's enjoying the sunshine before Alabama football kicks off here in 23 days. And Walter, as a quarterback, back when you were in school, what were your thoughts going into fall camp? I'd imagine that was probably a lot of excitement at first.
Well, you work so hard during the off season to get ready, and then you're moving into fall camp to put on your show for the season. And that's what's exciting about it, just to get back out there with your teammates, to be able to make everybody better. That's an exciting time for a quarterback.
It's really one time a year, too, that you get to focus purely on football for at least a couple weeks before classes start, right?
Yes. You focus on football. You don't have to worry about the class load there in school. You just go out there and get yourself ready so you can be ready for the stretch, for the season.
Well, when you look at this year's team, what are some of the things that catch your eye? Maybe some of the question marks, some of the strong points.
The strong points that I see relative to this team, just looking at the last couple years, you look at in 17 and 18, you add those 2 years together. On the defensive side of the ball, you lose about 17 key players. That's including J.K. Scott. J.K. Scott was a tremendous asset defensively for this team in terms of putting other teams in bad spots there. They lose him. It's going to be interesting in the punting game to see how that plays out. But to lose 17 defenders that in key positions that to the draft there, that's going to be a challenge for this team to be able to replace. I think this year is going to be the year that the offense carries the defense. And because out of those 2 years, you only you lost 3 players in 17 and 3 players on offense in 18. So you just lost very few offensive players. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the young guys, adapt to being the showman on the field this year for the University of Alabama.
Well, what's the best way to engage yourself with all the receivers? I mean, isn't every receiver open all the time? Is that the key phrase?
For receivers, they are. You could be double and triple covered, man. Why you didn't throw it to me? I was open. I think for to make everybody happy, I think there's a concept on the field that everybody understands, and that concept comes from the playbook. And a quarterback reacting to what a defense gives them, a receiver cannot complain. Because if you got a top-notch receiver, I think that Jerry Jeudy is going to be outstanding. And the whole receiving core is going to be outstanding. If you have double coverage on him, and it's going to open up somebody else. So at the end of the day, if Jerry Jeudy had 2 targets, he can't complain because the team schemed against him. And they understand that concept. That quarterback spot, being able to deliver to those guys that are open, it's all about team, really. And when you're moving the chains, that's fun. It doesn't matter who's getting it. It's fun to do that when you're moving the chains. So that's what I see in terms of being able to make everyone happy. I think the offense, the running backs, you got 4 quality running backs. And Najee Harris, in my opinion, is going to be outstanding, there in terms of how he plays. You got Damon Harris, a great guy, great person. I really like the way he interviews. I look forward to just seeing him develop, not only as a player and just seeing his career develop. Then you have Josh Jacobs. Just very shifty, understands the game. He has a natural knack for what's going on coming out of the backfield. And then I tell you, Brian Robinson, he's an outstanding player as well here from Tuscaloosa. I look at the offense. You look at the offensive line. The key matchup, in my opinion, on that line is what's happening on the right side with Anthony Leatherwood, as well as the right tackle.
Alex. I think they're going to shift Alex to the right side.
That's what I'm talking about.
Leatherwood, and then maybe Jedrick Wills Jr. move inside to guard.
I know, but the guy that was there,
Matt Womack.
Yeah, that's going to be a unique battle in terms of that spot.
Yeah. Yes.
But in terms of seeing, how the offensive line does, I think Lester Cotton, I'm looking for him to be a leader on that offensive line. I see those guys really going downhill in terms of the offense there. They're going to be playing, and they're coming downhill. They're coming downhill fast, as an offensive unit. That's what I see.
Walt, did you like to throw it to the tight end? How can they help the offense? At Alabama, it's always been said, well, the tight end's always open, but they don't get the ball. Howard Cross was there. And different.
Well, Howard came after me.
Right.
And Howard had a reputation of he could not catch a cold. that was his reputation at Alabama. But when he got to the Giants, I mean, he worked on his game to where he became an outstanding blocker. You know, that's what tight ends for is they're blocking because they set the edge. And once they set the edge, that allows running backs to do their things. But in the passing game, in setting the edge and doing all that blocking, they get lost a lot of times. And you get a lot of tight ends open. So it's exciting to see how you got 3, maybe 4 tight ends on this team that can play. I really like. I can't think of his name. Let's see.
Yeah, Irv Miller, Forrest.
Yes, I like the tight end core. I'm not going to really nail down all of them there, but they have a great core of tight ends that love playing the game, and they love just being a part of winning, and that's important. They're 14.
Yeah, they got quite a few. I think they can.
Too many of the guys to really name all of them. You put me on the spot, AP.
Yeah, myself included. Yeah, Miller, Forrestal, and Hale Hinches. He talked today to the media. I dropped by the football complex. He spoke today, and Irv Smith, of course, and they're all quality players.
Absolutely.
Red, you'll start things off for us today. You're in the game.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. Hope all y'all doing well today.
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Mr. Walter, first of all, I want to say thank you and really appreciate everything you did for us here at Alabama.
Well, thank you.
And Mr. Walter, what's the biggest thing that you learned after leaving football from Alabama that you carry on with your daily life today?
You know, one of the things that I learned as a player here in terms of playing as a quarterback in the 80s, it was a unique situation there for me. I was, fortunate enough to be the first black quarterback there to play during that time. And one thing that I took to heart that I learned from other players or other black players, I had talked with upperclassmen and I talked with players that were there in the 70s. And one of the things that I heard, in terms of their competing for a spot or competing to be on the team, is they felt like they had to be better every day than their competitor there. And what I mean by better, twice as good. And I adapted that thought process as a player when I was down here. I was going to do whoever I was competing against, I was going to do what they did, if they did it right, twice as good. And I was going to do more. And that was a philosophy that I had. And that philosophy that I adapted back then is something that I do relative to my business that I work in right now. I try to take it to another notch, take it to another level and compete that way. And it's been good for me to do it that way. And I'm glad. And you're going through the experiences that I've had here or that I had during that time. That's one thing that I learned that I take with me daily in terms of what I do in everyday life.
Yes, sir. And Walter, when you were there being your own self, did you feel a difference in that race barrier where you had to give extra effort to outbeat somebody?
No. Coach Bryant did a great job in terms of standing in the gap for all of his players. And that's what any player would ask for, that the head of the organization just stand in the gap and let those players play. It did not matter the color of my skin there with him. And that's what mattered to me there. And having him do that, it freed me up to allow my abilities to come out and play the way I played there for 4 years there.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, Mr. Walter, because a lot of people that don't know you and know the game that well, and Coach Bryant would say things, but I always like to get it straight from the player, and I really appreciate you answering that, sir.
Well, I appreciate you asking that question. It's all about what goes on the field. We cannot control what goes on the outside of us.
Amen.
I was not naive in terms of what may have been going on around the team or what have you. And I know that, you get in situations you could have gotten in situations then that may have been unpleasant per se, but hey, that happens today, and that's just a part of life in terms of how life plays itself out. But I am very happy. I'm very grateful to have had a coach like Bear Bryant to be able to just stand in the gap for me and all the players on the team, to allow us to play a game that we enjoy here at the University of Alabama.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Walter, you have a blessed day, and always remember this. We are the Crimson Tide, 18 bound with a tour. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide to you, Red. Thanks for the call as always. We head now to Corey. Corey, you're in the game.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing this afternoon?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, Mr. Walter Lewis, how are you doing this
I'm
afternoon?
doing well, Corey. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to speak to one of the great players that played for Bear Bryant. And as a quarterback, I know playing down there, I know it's one of the hardest positions to play, and probably it's probably the most pressured position because you're playing for the most prestige universities in Alabama. But as part of this year's quarterback, a couple of things I'd like to ask you. Do you sense that there's, like, I'm trying to use this analogy, the rope is kind of breaking in a way as far as the way things are being handled? Because you want to put the right guy in there, but you don't. And I know feelings, in a way, you don't want to. I know it's not always about feelings, but you want to handle it the correct way. But do you sense something hot is going on, or do you think it's being handled correctly?
Well, one thing that we don't know is we don't know what everything that goes on the inside there at the university with the team. We don't know what goes on. I remember as a player, I would hear stuff that I'm like, this is way off in terms of what's really, really going on. So that's one thing we as fans or on being on the outside, we don't really know how things play themselves out. There are so many expectations put on the University of Alabama as a team, and you put expectations on the coaches, you put expectations on the players, and that's pressure. Those expectations build up to pressure, in terms of what actually happens. And the thing that I did not experience that these guys are experiencing today is social media is just out there. And it wasn't there when I was a player. So a lot of stuff that these guys are feeling right now, I wasn't able to feel back then in terms of what I heard. But, Nick Saban has a pretty good track record of handling this type of situation. And yes, he's going to trip up too in terms of how he may handle something. That's just a part of it. I mean, it's like playing a game. You're not going to throw every pass perfectly. Some of them you're going to throw that are not perfect. And it's the same with coaches. He may say something that may not be right. One of the players may say something that may not be right. But it all comes to focus as it relates to how he's going to handle things. And I look at his track record. I have a lot of confidence in what Nick Saban has done over the last several years. And, this situation, as it played out with me as a quarterback here, we competed just like this. It was the same talk back in 1980 like they're talking right now in terms of competing against the quarterback. We played 4 quarterbacks, and it was just constant competition every day. And Coach Bryant handled it the way he handled it. He let it play itself out. And in this situation with what's going on at the University of Alabama, it's going to play itself out as well. There. When
you played the game involving 315 with Bear Bryant's win, were you aware, like either after the game, that Bear Bryant just won a 315 game, or I know you probably didn't concentrate on during the game that this is 315 that you're just beating Auburn, but after the game, when did it come to you that Bear Bryant just made history, that he just broke the all-time winning record for most wins in college football?
Corey, that game is a very good example of what we just talked about. For the people on the outside, the 315 was huge for the state of Alabama. It was huge all over the United States. But internally with us as players, yes, we heard about it, but it was about the next game that we were playing to win. That's what we focused on as players. And that's what goes on over between the walls over there. I mean, it's not as big as what we make it on the outside. And let me tell you something about that 315, Corey. I'm 56 now. At 56 is when I reflect back, to those days of the 315 game. That's the constellation. I really think about that game then in terms of being, putting Coach Bryant over the hump in terms of being the winningest college football coach at that particular time, there. So that's a very unique situation, and that's very similar to your first question that you had.
Hey, thanks for the call, Corey. Appreciate you as always. Roll Tide to you. Just 23 days away, buddy.
Roll Tide. Thanks for letting me talk to you, Walter Lewis.
Thanks, Corey. Thank you. Great questions.
Great call there from Corey. Tom, you are in the game. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are y'all this afternoon?
Great.
Very good. Thank you.
Walter, I want to echo what Red said. I really enjoyed the time you played at Alabama. It was a lot of fun and very entertaining. I really appreciate your abilities that you had here at Alabama.
Well, I tell you, one thing that's stuck in my mind, Coach Bryant always said, you work hard and you get a chance to put on your show. And I'm going to say I really enjoyed putting on my show for the fans.
Well,
you
did that, and it was fun.
It was,
my question, if AP and Chad don't mind, is for you. It's a quarterback experience, and as a fan, I look around and Coach Saban's done such an outstanding job recruiting talent everywhere. You alluded to it when the show opened. And as a quarterback, though, you evaluate those guys that's around you. You know what each one can do. And I guess, does the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, do they say, look, we got these guys out here, let's use them. And we're going to design plays for you to get the ball to them. And how much of that goes in to preparing a quarterback as the season gets ready? For instance, right now in fall camp and leading up to the season.
Well, if you think of an offensive coordinator, offensive coordinators are different. Some coordinators, they have a system that they run to where that system is set to where it distributes balls to everyone. I mean, it's just offensive coordinators, they teach you. You take what the defense gives you, and it's easy when it's done that way. Then you have other coordinators that come in and they change stuff every week to where it's different in terms of scheming or creating matchups to where they can put their best players in the best positions there. When you have a situation where you have systems, you distribute things the way you want them to be distributed it. And if you have a system to where that's not the case, then that's where you get stuck in the mud sometimes, where you sit around and you talk about, okay, this is what we want to do. It's a team concept. And when you keep the team concept in focus there, I think players buy into that thought process. And I think that's the most important thing as a player. That's the most important, should be the most important thing as an offensive unit to make things happen. And that's how you discuss how you want to take advantage or exploit what a defense may give you week in and week out.
That's very interesting. Thanks, Walter, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
We're in this first full week of camp, a great discussion in this first full hour of the game. Had callers earlier. We'll be able to get to a few more callers in the 3 o'clock hour. Walter, like your first hour here on the radio on the game so far?
Oh, it's been great. I've really enjoyed this. Absolutely.
You've done this before, though, Walter.
Yeah.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Not like this.
You had to. There's no way you came in here and just knocked out a whole hour just with a breeze.
I've never done it like this before. No, this is my first time.
You're a natural.
Well,
You're natural. You got the poise. You got the stance already locked down.
That's fun. Y'all make it easy for me. Absolutely.
Hey, that's what we're here for, Walter.
Absolutely.
But Walter, let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a quick question going back to the quarterback competition.
Okay.
When you have, how do you, as a starting quarterback, how do you manage knowing that a guy is trying to compete for your job? What is the mentality on a player's perspective going into a competition like that?
Well, one of the things that you focus on is really what you can control. And you can't get locked in about that person. You're given the same play that he's given, and you got to execute. That's the bottom line. And if you can focus on the execution, I mean, it's a lot that goes into executing a play. I mean, it's footwork, it's what you see, it's how you react to the pressure. I mean, it's a lot how you react to expectations or what have you. You put all those things into focus, and you compete there. You don't focus on that. If you focus on him, you're gonna get messed up. That's just a crude way of saying it, because the emotions and the personalities get involved there. But if you just focus on what you can control and what you do and execute it to perfection, that's where you make progress as a quarterback.
And obviously it's a lot different than other positions because you have multiple linebackers on the field. You have multiple, secondary members. You can switch out running backs. But it's for a quarterback, it's like you have to have that one.
You got to have that one. And yeah, if you got linebackers, you got linemen, you got running backs, they switch in and out. That's just a part of the game in terms of how it's played. But that position right there, it's a piece of turf that's only one guy can stand on and execute the play. And that's what makes it so unique in terms of making it happen. And that one person who's sitting on that turf, it can make or break a team in terms of how that team performs. And that's the game of quarterback.
So how would you handle it in the media-wise? I know you probably read the comments that Jalen had on Saturday about the quarterback competition and how it's kind of mismanaged. Do you feel like, and I know Chad's been talking about this all week, do you feel like Nick Saban should have had that conversation with Jalen Hurts and maybe Tua Tagovailoa and just kind of like, look, this is where we stand with this competition, and you guys control your own destiny here. Do you feel like he had to have that conversation with Jalen of, this is what's happening right now, but, this is what we're going to do moving forward?
Well, what I said at the beginning, one thing we don't know is what goes on in that building. We don't know. But looking at it from out here, that should have been some conversation probably as it relates to how we're going to work through this. It could have come from both sides. I mean, Jalen could have had conversations with Coach. Coach could have had conversations with Jalen. It works both ways there in terms of what needs to happen in order to get stuff done. That's with assistants, so on and so forth. That's how you give a person a chance to evaluate where he is so he can improve, there. So those are things that I see on the outside. But like I said, I don't know what goes on in that building, there. And, that's where I see it right now.
When you were under center, was there somebody opposing you that just talked a lot of smack that stuck in your head?
You're not going to believe this, but this guy was well respected, played in the pros. Everybody, and when I call his name, everybody's going to know him, but he talked more smack than any, and it was clean smack. It wasn't dirty smack, but it was Reggie White.
Really?
Reggie White. He talked more smack up there on the defensive line than anybody that I've ever played against. And I know I got an email from one of my former players. It's on YouTube where Reggie hits me, and they were just kidding me about how hard he hit me. Well, how did you get up from that? I'm like, he said, man, Reggie really got after you. I said, well, did the camera really focus on my mouth in terms of what I was saying? Because I was telling Reggie, is that the best? Is that all you got? But Reggie could talk a lot of smack, and he's a minister of defense, and he tell the offensive lineman, say, Jesus is coming today. He's coming. Stuff like that all the time with Reggie.
Who was the hardest hit you ever had?
The hardest hit was Penn State 1981, Joe Parlavecchio. We ran the wishbone. We actually won that game. I think it was 31-10 or something like that, and that was Coach Bryant's 314th victory. And I was running the option and turn up field, and we collided like two rams. And I just went. It just went dark. Couldn't see, and I was laying on the ground, and I remember laying there, and I remember opening my eyes, and I could see him. Blood was dripping down his face mask onto me, and he took his elbow and put it between my face mask to get off the ground on me. And my teammates were watching him. He went off the field. I went back to the huddle, and when he got to the sideline, he fell over. and my nickname with the guys, my nickname was Tank. That's what they called me. And they said, "Man, Tank done got him," or whatever. But it was just that was one of the toughest hits that I've ever had.
It's not too bad for a quarterback, right?
Not too bad.
Take him out.
I took him out. Sure did. Yeah.
Reggie White became your teammate at Memphis.
He did, and great guy. We had a great time. I hate his life was cut short, but it was. But he was a great person, and I'm just grateful that my paths crossed with him. Absolutely.
Chad Haynie, A.P. Steadham, Walter Lewis, the former Bama quarterback, joining us here in studio on Throwback Thursday on the game on Tide 102.9 and 100.9, powered every day by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Visit them online on tuscaloosatoyota.com or just down the street from us here on Skyland Boulevard. It's Chad Haynie, A.P. Steadham, and Walter Lewis sitting in for Ryan Fowler today on the game as the bearded one, Ryan Fowler's out on a cruise in the Grand Cayman Islands right now. The game brought to you by Tuscaloosa Toyota, home of the one price, one place guarantee. 0% APR financing for 60 months right now on a Toyota Camry. Visit tuscaloosatoyota.com. Walter, we've had a lot of callers for you, but I hear a special one on the line for you right now. Harry, you were in the game.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just got out of school and made my way up Highway 22 here in Dallas County and just had me a plate of collard greens and some baked chicken. I'm doing pretty well.
Oh, it's awesome.
What's on your mind, Harry?
I heard you had Walter Lewis on the guest panel today, and I hadn't talked to Walter Lewis probably in 40 years. We were rival quarterbacks in high school. I was a starting quarterback at Greenville High School, and he was at the infamous T.R. Miller under Frank Cotton, and they were a juggernaut during that time.
Now, let me. Is this Kenny? Is it Harry or Kenny?
This is Harry. This is the younger brother. Kenny was my older brother. He quarterbacked against Walter in 1979, and then I quarterbacked against Walter in 1980.
Yes,
Kenny went on to Tuskegee, signed with Tuskegee, and he ended up in the Hall of Fame at Tuskegee. I signed with Tuskegee a little bit later, but I transferred and got a scholarship out of the University of Houston. But both brothers quarterbacked against Walt.
Absolutely. Hey, I remember those battles. You were a little bit younger than him. He was a year older than me, I think. There and
yeah, he was.
You all were stiff competitors, absolutely. And I do remember y'all, absolutely.
Yeah, those were some classic matches, and after you left, we were able to get over the T.R. Miller hump, and it kind of springboarded us into becoming a power in what is now 5A football down in Greenville.
You are exactly right, and we used to have some battle royals in high school, and your program did take off after I left and went to college there. So it's a pleasure to hear from you.
Yeah, I hadn't heard from you probably in 40 years. I think the last time me and you had a conversation, we had played y'all in baseball in Greenville, and you and Charlie German had both homered in the first inning, and we came back and beat y'all down there, and I shook hands with you after the game. I was playing outfield, and you were just wild by how big my hands were.
Yeah. And y'all had a pitcher. Was it Peanut? Is that what it? What was his name?
Earl Hawkins. They call him Bobo.
Bobo. I knew he had a a nickname there, but I couldn't remember exactly. But I remember him distinctly. The way he came off of the mound throwing the ball. I remember that very vividly, and even the way he wore his hat too.
Right. He ended up signing with Alabama State. He started up there for 4 years and was a great pitcher for the Hornets.
Well, Harry, you know this is Throwback Thursday on this radio station, right?
Well, I figured it out, yeah.
And this is definitely a throwback. 40 years. That's hey, man, this is awesome to hear from you. Do you get back to Greenville very often?
Well, my mother still lives there, and she had a few health issues, and my brother Kenneth left Atlanta, and he kind of has moved back to help take care of her. I've been over here in Dallas County for 21 years, and I've been coaching football for 20 of those, and so teaching school now, and just getting ready for retirement in a couple of years, and everything is going well.
Well, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to call in here and visit with us, and I go through Greenville all the time. In fact, Velma Briggs, she's a general manager for the water treatment facility there. I just had a conversation with her just the other day trying to see what was going on in the city, and she married one of the top players there, Alfonso Briggs. Al Briggs, that's correct, and had a good visit with her. So it's good to hear from you. Tell your brother Kenny I said hello, and I wish him well, and your mom, and everyone in your family. Tell everyone I said hello.
I sure will, man. And I just think back with me, you, and going against each other. And we had Alvin Briggs and Tommy Powell and my younger brother Jimmy. Man, those were some good battles back in the day, man.
Those were awesome battles. Absolutely. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Man, it's good hearing from you, man. Wish you the best in all that you do.
Hey, thank you so much.
You take care.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking the time to call in, Harry, and that's a cool conversation right there. And Walter, I'll ask you this. Texas high school football gets a lot of attention, but I grew up in Georgia, and when I came over here to Alabama for school, really opened my eyes to how big high school sports here are in the state of Alabama. Just talk about your time and how special it was playing high school sports here.
For me, I was very fortunate, like Harry was, growing up in a community where they supported the sports. And I grew up in Bruton, played at T.R. Miller, and I remember when I was 6, 7-year-old, I went to one of the games and saw Jamie Riggs, who was a coach there, one of the great coaches there at T.R. Miller, playing as a high school player, and they had other players as well. And I kind of fell in love with the game. But there was a lot of support there locally amongst families and friends for football, all of the sports, baseball, track. I mean, it was just a sports town, and that made it exciting for me and all the others who participated in the game. So, but for the state of Alabama, you can read. I used to get up every morning after a game on Friday and read about all the other teams in Huntsville. I mean, little towns. I mean, Huntsville, Pisgah. It wouldn't just be Birmingham but everybody. I woke up on Saturday mornings to see what the scores were going to be for all the schools, and it seems like across the state, everyone had a real genuine support for the aspect of football and sports in general.
Chad Haynie and A.P. Steadham sitting in for Ryan Fowler today on the game here on Tide 102.9, and our special guest here this afternoon for the next hour at least is Walter Lewis, former Bama quarterback who played under Coach Bryant. And Walter, while we're talking about high school, let me just ask you, what was your recruitment process like with Coach Bryant and his staff?
Now that's a whole. This was. It's very interesting how my recruiting started. I almost went to Auburn. I was actually in Auburn on signing day. They recruited me the hardest. For when I was being recruited, I don't know if you remember, but they were recruiting the starting quarterback for Mississippi State, John Bond. He was the big-time quarterback coming out at that particular time. And I remember going to visit. We were all the big time prospects for visiting, and they had a list of all the prospects, and they didn't have like 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. That day they had the Bama Bell or whoever taking you around. So I actually got her sheet, and I looked at it, and they had like 2-star, 1-star, and no star. So I looked at my name, and I didn't have a star by mine. And I asked her, I said, well, what does this mean? She said, well, 2 stars, who they really liked, I get. And then the 1 star, they kind of just whatever. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have a star.
There weren't any stars.
It wasn't any stars. It wasn't any stars here, at Bama. But at Auburn, I was top on their board. And but I'll tell you what happened. When I was being recruited, I came in and they put me with 2 guys, Johnny Elias and Robert Russell. One was from Demopolis, and the other one was from Columbus, Georgia. And we sat down, and I had been praying about my decision of what to do. And we sat down, and those guys were not playing, but they were just as genuine as you could be about what really went on here at the university. And that's what I needed in my recruiting process. And my heart kind of came toward Alabama. And when I committed, they'd already committed 5 quarterbacks. I was the 6th quarterback.
Wow.
And it didn't matter,
yeah.
Who. And you know what? John Bond actually committed early to go to Mississippi State. And when he committed early to go to Mississippi State, that's when Coach Bryant, Mal Moore, Bryant Poole, Sylvester Croom, Bobby Marks, I mean, they got on the plane and flew to my house to see if I would, come to Bama. So that's the short version of what actually happened. But I'm gonna say this: my experience here, I wouldn't trade it for nothing. There, I went through some things. I listen to Tua. I read about Tua. I hear what Jalen Hurts has to say about frustration. I hear what Najee Harris had to say about frustration. And all those types of things. That's a part of the maturation process. And my freshman year, I went through a lot of stuff as relates, that was design stuff, because I think Coach Bryant saw, Mal Moore saw that it was an opportunity that I may have to play. And they put me through some pressure-packed situations every day. It was days I didn't even want to go to practice, but I had to go through that in order to mature as a young man, to be able to handle the pressure that comes here with that job, there. So I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world in terms of my experience of having the frustrations and all you have. That's just a part of the maturation process of growing up and becoming what you need to become as a player there on the team.
Walt, did you have a chance last season, this year, particularly the quarterbacks in the SEC, I think are much better as a whole in the league. Did you have a chance to see Jarrett Steadham and the quarterback from Missouri and those types of players?
I've watched Jarrett, and Jarrett's legit. He is a good quarterback. I haven't had a chance to watch the kid at Missouri.
Drew Lock.
I haven't had a chance to really just analyze his game, but what I hear is good stuff there. And if you want to compare when I was a player to what it is now, I mean, you got, the guys get the passing game. The passing game was something that was developing when I was coming along. But there are some great players in the SEC there. And the only holdback with LSU is that spot. And if LSU gets that spot handled, they're going to be tough customers to deal with there. And that position is a coveted position in the SEC, but you've seen the talent level really, really rise. Been some great quarterbacks here over the years.
Throwback Thursday segment sponsored by Spiller Furniture and Mattress, SpillerFurniture.com. Friendly credit decisions, 30, 60, 90-day, same as cash with credit approval financing available there at Spiller Furniture. See them over on 15th Street here in Tuscaloosa, or right off McFarland Boulevard over in Northport. Living room, bedroom, office, entertainment, kind of any furniture that you need, you can go get it at Spiller Furniture. Making your dollar go further since 1948. Walter Lewis will be in the game for about another 45 minutes, joined in the first 3 hours of the show by former Bama great Walter Lewis, quarterback. And right at the tail end there of the Bear Bryant era here at Alabama. And Walter, as we look at Alabama's schedule this year, especially early on, see any possible trip-ups for Alabama? This is a team that a lot of people expect early on to go 11-1, 12-0 here throughout the year.
Just looking at the schedule on paper, it looks like it favors Bama. They're just not knowing what's going on within the league with the other teams and what they have and what they don't have. But just looking at it on paper, it looks very favorable for Bama based on their situation. To me, offensively, Alabama has a lot going for them there offensively. And I think this year offensively, the offense is going to carry the defense. That's just looking at it on paper. As you go through the season, you learn a lot about yourself there. It's going to give the defense some time to catch up if they have to, but you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about the other teams that you'll have to play. Just looking at the schedule, first glance, Tennessee could be an interesting game for Bama at Tennessee. Just knowing the mentality of a Jeremy Pruitt and just knowing how it's gone over the last several years at Tennessee, relative to how many wins Alabama has, that game could be an interesting game in my opinion. There, in the early part of the season, you look at maybe Texas A&M as being one. I mean, they're going to Texas A&M, I believe, or are they coming here?
A&M's coming here this year. Yeah.
Well, if they were going to Kyle Field, I could think differently. But Jimbo hasn't beaten Nick Saban yet, but he has. But he was not a head coach. He was a coordinator there at Florida State. And Jimbo has a knack of knowing how to get his players ready to play Nick Saban. So even though it's coming here, it could be an interesting matchup as well. So no game you can take for granted. No team you can take for granted. If Bama comes to play like they're capable of playing and not allow the drama of things around them to get to them, I mean, it could be an interesting season for them. Auburn, when they get to Auburn, Gus Malzahn does a great job, and Kevin Steele has developed into one of the elite coordinators there. I mean, he's had some rough bumps and bruises along the way, but I really like what he's doing, and they're recruiting as well. There. So from a standpoint of what this schedule is like, it's a favorable schedule right now, but like Kirk said, you just don't know how injuries will play into the equation on both sides, relative to Alabama's team or other teams. You just don't know, and you just have to take one game at a time. Now, that's something that I see. I would like to just step out a little bit as it relates to the SEC things that I see. I've been looking at the coaches that are under Nick Saban's tree, and I'm looking at the ones that are out there right now. You look at Will Muschamp at South Carolina. Will was under Nick for a little while, but not very long. He stepped out. He got his bumps and bruises. Didn't really get a chance to absorb the process that Nick Saban is creating. He's gone out and got his bumps and bruises. You got Jimbo Fisher is at Texas A&M right now. He was under Nick a little bit longer, and then he went to Florida State, and he got under the regime of Bobby Bowden in terms of that tree and learned some things. But in terms of the process that Nick Saban has been developing in his career over the years, he didn't really go through all of that. Jeremy Pruitt has been with him for a little while as well, but Jeremy has been around. He's had a part of the process, but not a lot. He's at Tennessee. And then there's one more that I'm missing.
Kirby Smart.
I'm getting to him, but it seems like there's one more out there. Well, let's just go to Kirby Smart. The thing that I see in the SEC relative to that part of the tree of Nick Saban's tree, Kirby Smart has been with him for a while. And Kirby Smart was there at LSU, got a chance to see that process and how it developed and created LSU. He went to Miami for just a little while, and then he came to Alabama. He's been with them for a while, and he's seen the development of the process. And what Kirby Smart has done, he's learned a lot, and he's taken it to Georgia. What I see with him is, in Georgia, they're going to be the beast of the East, okay? And for the West, they're going to be the pests for the West. I'm serious. I mean, it's just, and you look at Kirby, the recruiting aspect of things, you look at how he's recruiting and how he's bringing players in, it's going to be very interesting in terms of how it plays out over time, over the next 3 to 4 years, in terms of the strength of the SEC. That's what I see relative to the SEC.
And you talk about the process and Kirby being around it so much, Walter, and that when you look at Georgia is most – it's not a duplicate of Alabama, but it's most closely mirrored to Alabama in the way he's built his program.
Well, and also, Coach Georgia, Mark Richt was there, but this is the ingredient that Georgia did not have was a coach like Kirby Smart in terms of been through the process to where they had all the components in place there. And what you see now with Kirby Smart there, he's basically that last piece of the puzzle to be able to put things together at Georgia to make it work. And that's what I'm just looking at down the road here, how it's going to play out. It's going to be very, very interesting how the SEC plays out, over the next 3 to 4 years.
I don't think, is there anyone in the room, including Marquise, that doesn't believe we see Alabama, Georgia back in the SEC championship game this year?
No, that they both get my vote.
I mean, that's the way I see it right now as well. But like you said, you just don't know about injuries and all those things. But if not this year, I know down the road it's a clash
with
of the two.
Will Muschamp improving South Carolina, with Dan Mullen at Florida. The SEC East, as far as Georgia's concerned, it's theirs to win, but it's also theirs to lose as well. So, like as he mentioned, with injuries, with all this that can play out throughout the season, I think that Georgia's kind of controls their own destiny in the SEC East, kind of similar to how Alabama controls their destiny in the SEC West.
Yeah, Georgia does get South Carolina, I believe, week 2 or 3 this year, really early, week 2, AP.
At Columbia.
At South Carolina. So that's probably might be one spot to watch Georgia. They have that kind of early test that Alabama kind of doesn't. They go to Ole Miss. Texas A&M comes here, but not a game that you expect someone to leap up and beat Alabama. Possibly South Carolina could jump up and get the Bulldogs. Great conversation there. Walter, we were talking a little bit on air in the break about the importance of fundamentals, and you were talking about how Jalen Hurts, could fit into that Clemson office, asking Blake Bedingfield that. And you're just talking about his footwork and the little things in the game that, if you're coached correctly, how they can make such a huge difference.
It does. Fundamentals in any sport is very, very important if you want to master the sport. And if you look at players that are very good at the quarterback position, you go back to their fundamentals. And if you have just listening to Blake, he understood the mentality of a Lane Kiffin in terms of his approach to coordinating an offense. I mean, that's what his thing is. I mean, he has a very good knack of creating matchups, there. But in terms of the fundamental aspects of the game, that's not his focus. And that's something that Jalen Hurts cannot control, or any player that comes into a situation, he cannot control that. That's just how it is. But certain players being thrust into a situation that he cannot control, their game may be set back as a result of that. Brian DeBall, same thing. Brian DeBall came from the Patriots. He's been on the pro level for a long time. He never really coached position there, and he never played that position. So to understand fully the impact of fundamental stuff, that may not have been the case there. But what I see in terms of what Nick Saban has done, that 10th coach, that extra coach, Dan Enos has been able to come in and be that person. And what I see there is Enos played the position before, and Enos is a fundamental guy. And in terms of answering a question that may be there relative to footwork, how you view the field for Jalen Hurts, and that's where he's weak at. I think he may get an opportunity to exploit someone who has been there before and be able to improve his game. So fundamentals are very important. How quickly you get away from the trash up front to make decisions is very, very important. And when you can do that, it's easy. You can feel what's going on. But if your footwork is off, it's tough to be successful at that position.
Yeah, it just takes one coach to turn the light on for somebody. And, in Jalen's case, he'll probably improve on his fundamentals with his footwork. And then Tua, he's going to have to read the defenses. That's his, so to speak, weakness that he's going to try to improve on this fall. So every coach can really help somebody if they work on those fundamentals. That's the key.
Really fun to watch. Might see some of that in this Training Days program that ESPN's putting on that premieres tonight, of how that has a difference in this quarterback race, having a quarterback coach specifically in that quarterback's room, being able to go over things specifically with them. So, Walter, it's been a real pleasure to have you in here for these first 3 hours, and thanks for your time and sitting in with us.
Oh, it's been great. I've enjoyed it, and hope to do it soon for you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Marquise, in the break, offering Walter a show whenever he wants it. Here on Sound 102.9. Said, hey, we'll make room for you.
A star was born in Bruton, Alabama, Walter Lewis.